in his late 20s, has been charged with murder.
Police confirm the gunman was live streaming the killings at one mosque on social media. We'll talk about that more in a moment. 2 other people are being held, but it is unclear to this hour whether they too are involved. Police say none of the people in custody are in any kind of extremist watch list.
We had no information. On them at all either.
New Zealand police are not identifying the murder suspect for legal reasons. He hasn't yet appeared in court yet. That will come tomorrow morning, local time, when he is to be formally charged with murder. But in an online post, the gunman calls himself Brenton Tarrant and says he is a 28-year-old citizen of Australia. Australian police and Australian media identifying him as well. Under his name online is a racist manifesto claiming that white Christians are under threat from other religions and races. He also cites mass shooters like Norwegian terror.
The Quebec City mosque shooter, Alexander Bissonnette, is one of the names on the rifle as well as the magazines that is being used. Various church shootings. Anders Breivik, who of course killed so many a number of years ago. Mass immigration. He deals with saying that Donald Trump is someone that he admires for being a supporter of the far right and uniting of those who are involved in what he effectively says is a race war. Much of it very typical of...
John, it's interesting, he in his manifesto actually spoke directly about Donald Trump and indicated that he doesn't a fan of the populism and some of the anti-immigrant support that put him into office. Donald Trump's response so far has not to acknowledge any sort of mention of him in the manifesto, but very much to express his sympathy with the people of...
Not the least of which is one of the individuals who he also mentions, again, with what degree of seriousness we don't know, but this is an individual who is from the right in the United States.
Bow to Allah. I'm not going to do that. This nation, that's for Muslim women, asking the nation to bow and with the Muslim prayer to say that Allah is the only true God in this nation. That's not...
We've talked to them about it and it's over.
What did you say to them?
Well, I said to them, probably not the right time to do it.
Did it embarrass you?
It wasn't. Well, most leaders know if you've got organisations and there are various branches of the organisation and they do things and you've just got to stand in there and talk to them.
Did anyone from Man Up protest outside of court after Christchurch? The man who's alleged to have committed this atrocity?
No, not that I know of.
Would that not be a more appropriate place for protest, especially for an organisation that purports to reduce violence?
I think the appropriate place right now for protest...
On August 27, 2020, Brenton Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The terrorist had walked into 2 mosques in Christchurch in New Zealand on March 15, 2019 and killed 51 men, women and children just before Friday prayers. In his manifesto, Tarrant said the attacks were revenge for what he called a Muslim invasion of Christian lands. What were the ideas that inspired a 28-year-old white man with a seemingly normal life to commit a brutal act of terror? I'm Ali Mustafa, and this is the Christian Far Right Decoded. Brenton Tarrant laid out his motivations in a document titled The Great Replacement, a reference to the Great Replacement theory based on the white genocide conspiracy. It holds that white Christians are being systematically eradicated and replaced by inferior races such as Jews and people of color as part of a vast conspiracy. The theory is cited as a major motivation behind the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, where marchers chanted slogans like "Jews will not replace us." Tarrant described himself as a fascist who was protecting the Christian race. In a reference to anti-Muslim Serbian song from the Yugoslav war, Tarrant wrote that he worked part-time as a kebab removalist. He also had kebab remover painted on one of his semi-automatic rifles. The guns were covered in other code, such as 14 words painted prominently on one of the rifles. It's a reference to these 14 words coined by the now deceased leader of the Order, an American neo-Nazi terrorist group. Other painted references include this man, Sebastiano Venier, an Italian admiral who went to war with the Turks in the 16th century, and Luca Treni, an Italian right-wing terrorist who opened fire on a group of African migrants in 2018. One of the weapons featured the name of French-Canadian Alexandre Bissonnette, who killed 6 people at a mosque in Quebec in 2017. Terence Gare featured the symbol of the Black Sun, which dates back to the Nords of ancient Europe, but was later appropriated by the Nazis when it became a symbol of white power. And historical dates of Christian defeats of the Muslim Turks through the ages. Brenton Tarrant also made contact with imprisoned Norwegian mass murderer Anders Breivik, who said he had killed because of the threat of Muslim immigration to Norway. During his trial, Breivik greeted the court with a Nazi salute. Brenton Tarrant was different, flashing the OK sign. They're both being used by white nationalists as symbols of white power. Tarrant wrote, "As long as a white man still lives, they will never conquer our lands." Tarrant cites the Muslim possession of the Hagia Sophia as historic wrong needing correction. This passage in Tarrant's manifesto alludes to an in-joke in the alt-right movement on how shooter games had become safe spaces to meet, plan, organize, and kill without consequence. It was on these online platforms that Tarrant was desensitized and eventually radicalized. Christian white nationalists are no longer confined to the peripheries of society. Because they exist online and the communities aren't in a specific geography, the Christian far right has gone global. Its hate has found committed followers on various platforms online, and more continue to spring up. The Christian far right is no longer hanging out on street corners. It's gone virtual, making it impossible to estimate and ascertain the size of the threat. It has also gone mainstream with President Donald Trump in power, with many white supremacists supportive of his immigration policies. And that's why Christchurch might just be the beginning of a long, hard fight. And that's the Christian Far Right Decoded. Find me on Twitter at Ali_Mustafa.